Here on the table I have the Blind Learning Aptitude Test, or BLAT for short. The test consists of a manual, which is here. Now it does look to be rather thick, but you don't have to worry. There's a lot of information at the front which you can helpfully ignore, just really giving information about the test itself and its validity. But at the back there's a great deal of information in terms of how to administer the test and the language that you can use while you're administering it. The test itself is divided into 6 parts, and there are training sheets which you can see here on the right. There is a score sheet which I'll talk about in just a moment, and then there are the test items themselves. So this is the score sheet here. So we have TR, which stands for training. Now for each of the 6 sections there are 2 training sheets that you administer first of all. There is the correct response, which is given as a number, and I'll explain about that when we're looking at the sheets. The number that you write down if the pupil does not give the correct answer, and then a comment. Up here it gives a suggestion of the comments that you might include, for example, saying whether the child is cooperative and whether they are slow, whether they're systematic, whether they're quick, and so on. So just as well as giving the correct answer, there's a lot of information that can be gleaned just by observing the child. So I'm going to move that out of the way, and let's now look at the first of the training sheets. So in the first section, you're going to do this with the child. Now I should have said that all of the sheets that I'm showing you have not been raised. They would need to be copied onto swell paper and then put through a heat copier to raise them if you are doing this with a child who has no or very poor vision. And you can direct the child to look along all of the items here, and you're going to ask them to find the one that's different. And once they've done that, you're going to ask if they can tell you why it's different. And if they can't, then you can ask them to look again, and when you get to the one that's different, ask them again, and if necessary you can give the answer and say there's something inside this one. You don't have to use the word lines or anything like that. Just see if you can get them to give you the reason why it's different. So this is training sheet 1, and you can see that's been marked on the bottom, T1. The next one that you do, which is the same training, sheet 2, which you do straight away after training sheet 1. Again, look along and tell me the one that's different. And again, you can see if they can tell you it's a different shape. The words square and circle don't need to be used. So once you have done those 2 training sheets, you would then move on to the test itself. And there are 8 parts in this first section. And again, very similar to what you've done, tell me the one that's different in each line. So you can see that as they move on, they get progressively more difficult. And there, which one is different? It's really quite tricky actually. And that one as well. So that's the first section. In section 2, we go back to our training sheets, and it's slightly different task for this one. This time you're going to encourage the pupil to look at the first item, and then to look along the line and to find one that is the same. Again, you're going to help them if they get stuck. As with the last one, we've got 2 training sheets for each section. So again, we're looking at the first and then we're looking along to see if we can find one that is the same. You wouldn't mention, of course, that it looks like a T and the last one looked like L, because if you are blind, then that's not going to mean anything to you in terms of understanding what the print type looks like. So we move on from there to the test itself properly, and it's the same idea. So I just quickly run through these to let you see what they are. You can see again that it gets progressively more difficult. You can repeat this instruction. Tell me the one that's the same as the first one. And so on. Much more difficult, and we get to 15, which is the last one. The third section is something slightly different again. This time you're going to show the student or the pupil the first line. And what you're going to try and get them to understand is that it shows a progression. And we'll then direct them to the choices that we've got underneath and ask them which one would come next in our line at the top. So here it would be obviously the larger circle. And again, you want them to see if they can tell you why they've chosen that one. And you'd hope that they would say that they're getting bigger. When the test is being administered, they don't need to explain, but it helps to know that they understand what is required. On this one here, slightly harder, I think. So again, you're encouraging them to look at the top line and then find which one comes next. Now, if they get stuck with this, you can emphasize that there's one line here, two lines here, three. So what would the next one be? You want 4 lines, so it would be that one. So that is really quite tricky. So I'll show you again what the test itself looks like. So here we have the first one, the second one, it's really quite more challenging, the third one, and fourth ones. They are much more difficult. And the last one. Okay. So on to the next section, which is by far the largest section. So here we have the training sheet, 2 training sheets that go first. And we've got a set of shapes on the left, and then we've got our set on the right. Now, since all of the others were presented in a linear manner, when we are looking for the right answer, we'll get a number, and they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is how they are numbered. We want the child to look at the top line here, and we want them to understand that there's a correspondence between this first shape here, the circle, and this shape here, which is more sort of oblong. So if this corresponds to that, then what's going to correspond to this shape here? We need to find the missing one. And so it would obviously be that one there. So that's our first training sheet. And then for our second one, so we've got 1 circle and then 2 circles, 1 circle with a line. So what would be next here? Then it's going to be item number 6 down here at the bottom. So if 1 corresponds to 2, this one's going to correspond to these 2 here. Now, this is a large section, as I said. We start at number 22 and we go all the way up to number 37 here. If the child gets 5 wrong consecutively, then you can stop. You can do that for the other sections as well, but particularly for this one, which is a very long section. The next one, Again, a different activity. We've got our shape on the left with a part that's missing, and over on the right, and again you're going to show the child all of this and help them to find it. You have to find the part of the line that's going to make up that shape. So that is really quite a challenging thing to do. And again, we have our other example here where we've got part of our shape and which line is going to fit into that space and make up our shape. So that's it. And here we have the test examples themselves. One, that's quite more challenging. We want them to understand that it's a pattern, which bit is going to fill it in. This one, again, more challenging. And the last one. Now the final set that we've got. In the manual, it encourages you, if you've got older children, to encourage them to work in columns. So looking at the first item here, and then underneath and underneath. In the second column, 1, 2, 3. And in the third column, 1, 2, and what would be the missing item. And then you would direct them across here to look at their choice. If you're working with younger children, they suggest that you encourage them to look at each row. Here's our first row, our second row, and our third row. There's something missing. Which shape is it going to be from our selection on the right? And again, when you are scoring this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, here's our final trial for our last section, working down the way for older pupils, across the way for younger pupils, and finding the correct one from the array on the right. I shall just quickly run through the different items for this last one. So we're challenging. Then we move on to dots in patterns. Here, lines, shapes, and you'll notice that they're slightly different until we get to the final one. So that is the end of the Blind Learning Aptitude